First and foremost, should we be interpreting President Trump's remarks on the Alexander Murray deal as support for that healthcare deal?
Well, I think it's support for some type of deal. I've said from the very beginning, a bunch of us have here in the White House, that the president wasn't interested in signing the original version of Alexander Murray, which was nothing more than an extension of the CSR payments. But if it could be packaged with some sort of larger deal that would actually make health care more affordable for more people, he'd be interested in looking at that. And I think that's what you're hearing today.
Mr. Director, big week for the budget. Is the Senate going to pass the budget this week?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're on schedule. They had a motion to proceed, which is one of those arcane motions they have in the Senate. Today, it passed. I don't think there were any objections to it. There may have been one or two, but I know it got the necessary votes to pass, so that we fully expect them to take up the vote either late Thursday or early Friday in the Senate.
Let me ask you about one senator who's been in the middle of all this, Senator Rand Paul. He said that he will support voting on the budget provided there's $43 billion in war funding overseas cut from that budget. What's your message to some of these holdouts like Senator Rand Paul, Senator Corker, Senator McCain?
Exactly the message that I've given to them, because I talked to Senator Paul a lot. Rand and I are friends. In fact, I saw him over the weekend. And let's just figure out a way to get to yes. And I think that Rand is actually doing that. I think one of the differences you're seeing now between the tax reform debate and the health care debate is that folks were looking for reasons to vote no. I think now they're actually sincerely working on figuring out a way to how they can support this effort. We appreciate that.
How important is it to get tax reform done by the end of the year?
Absolutely critical. If it doesn't get done this week, there's still a chance it gets done this year, but more likely it goes over to the beginning of next year. We need this reform. We need this tax package sooner rather than later, and that means by the end of this year, so that we can see the benefits of that as we grow the economy sooner. The longer we wait to get tax reform, the longer the benefits take to kick in. And as the budget director who's counting on those future revenues from economic growth to help lower the deficit, I need those sooner, not later.
I want to ask you about some of that revenue. The state and local deduction tax has been somewhat controversial. Do you expect that we could see tweaks to that potentially, where only high income earners are impacted by removing that that deduction? Is that still up for negotiation? And are the number of brackets up for negotiation?
The second point first, yes. I think what the president said from the very beginning, the folks on the Hill want to explore a higher bracket. That's fine with him. The president said many times he's more concerned about the impact on the middle class and the impact on corporations. And if the Hill wants to talk about a fifth bracket, right now we're at 0, 12, 25, and 35, that's fine. We're neither here nor there. If they want to talk about it, that's great. And as soon as I say I was going to deal with the second question, I forgot what your first question was.
State and local deduction, yes. Is that? Yeah.
I hope it doesn't go away. And it said, is it just limited to folks who are in the higher incomes? Keep in mind, only folks with higher incomes take that deduction now. More than 80% of folks who could deduct for state and local taxes don't, because they take the standard deduction. And when we double the size of the standard deduction, we expect even fewer people to be taking the state and local tax exemption, or at least to try to take it or qualify to take it. So we think a smaller and smaller group of people are impacted by the change in the SALT than would be under current law. So we hope that the state and local deductibility does go away. It's great policy. You and I live in the same state, you and I live in different states, but make the same amount of money and the same value of house. Shouldn't we pay the same amount of federal taxes? We think you should pay the same amount, and the state and local deductions have changed that system for too long.
One more question on tax and then a final question for you. But on this issue of tax reform, how important is it heading into 2018 for the Republican Party to get a win on tax reform?
It's absolutely critical that we get a win on tax reform and repeal and replace of Obamacare. Now, we blew that this summer. I think you will see the Senate come back to it next year. But these are the two things. It's very rare. Very rare in politics. I ran for office several times. I ran for Congress 4 times. It's very rare you get a chance to look voters in the eye and say, if you elect me, I will do this. And then you actually get the chance to do it. It's even rarer not to then do it. And I think that is really the one way that the Republican base could simply abandon the party, is for us not to do health care and not to do tax reform after 7 years of promising that we would.
All right, last question. I got to ask you about the Fed chair. Our very own Jennifer Jacobs asking President Trump directly during that press conference about a timeline for it, about his thoughts on Fed chair. Who do you like? Do you like John Taylor? Do you like Janet Yellen? What do you make of this Fed chair race?
I've heard the same names that you have. Who I like doesn't really make any difference. I don't think the president's going to come down and ask me what I think. If he did, I would say a lot of nice things about a lot of those folks. I've been a little bit critical in the past of Director Yellen's direction at the Fed, so she wouldn't be my first choice. That goes back to my days in the Financial Services Committee. But John Taylor will be a tremendous candidate. Mr. Warsh should be a tremendous candidate. Gary Cohn's name comes up every now and then. So I think there's a lot of good names on the list. I don't think with that list of names, even with Mrs. Yellen, who would not be my first choice, I don't think the president can make a bad choice.